This is the third book of Maccabees, chapter 1. So this is the beginning of a story. The introduction is already out there. Now, the first line says, when Philopator, or maybe you could say it Philopator, it's Philopator. So what do we like? Philopator or Philopator? When Philopator learned from those who returned that the regions which he had controlled had been seized by Antiochus, he gave orders to all his forces, both infantry and cavalry, took with him his sister Arsinoe, and marched out to the region near Raphia, where Antiochus' supporters were encamped. But certain Theodotus, determined to carry out the plot he had devised, took with him the best of the Ptolemaic arms that had been previously issued to him. Ptolemaic arms. And crossed over by night into the tent of Ptolemy, intending single-handedly to kill him and thereby end the war. But Dositheus, known as the son of Drimilius, a Jew by birth, who later changed his religion and apostatized from the ancestral traditions, had led the king away and arranged that certain insignificant men should sleep in the tent. And so it turned out that this man incurred the vengeance meant for the king. But a bitter fight resulted. The matters were turning out rather in favor of Antiochus, and Arsinoe went to the troops with wailing and tears, her locks all disheveled, and exhorted them to defend themselves and their children and wives bravely, promising to give them each 2 minas of gold if they won the battle. And so it came about that the enemy was routed in the action, and many captives were also taken. Now that he had foiled the plot, Ptolemy decided to visit the neighboring cities and encourage them, and by doing this, and by endowing their sacred enclosures with gifts, he strengthened the morale of his subjects. Since the Jews had sent some of their council and elders to greet him, to bring him gifts of welcome, and to congratulate him on what had happened, he was all the more eager to visit them as soon as possible. After he had arrived in Jerusalem, he offered sacrifice to the supreme God and made thank offerings, and did what was fitting for the holy place. And then, upon entering the place, and being impressed by its excellence and beauty, he marveled at the good order of the temple, and conceived a desire to enter the Holy of Holies. When they said that this was not permitted, because not even members of their own nation were allowed to enter, nor even all the priests, but only the high priest, who was preeminent over all, and he only went in once a year, the king was by no means persuaded. Even after the law had been read to him, he did not cease to maintain that he ought to enter, saying, even if those men are deprived of this honor, I ought not to be. And he inquired why, and he entered every other temple. No one there stopped him. And someone heedlessly said that it was wrong to take this as a sign in itself. But since this has happened, the king said, why should not I at least enter, whether they wish or not? Then all the priests in their vestments prostrated themselves and entreated the supreme God to aid in the present situation and to avert the violence of this evil design. And they filled the temple with cries and tears, and those who remained behind in the city were agitated and hurried out, supposing that something mysterious was occurring. The virgins who had been enclosed in their chambers rushed out with their mothers, sprinkled their hair with dust, and filled the streets, With groans and lamentations, those women who had recently been arrayed for marriage abandoned the bridal chambers, prepared for the wedding union, and neglected proper modesty in a disorderly rushed flock together in the city. Mothers and nurses abandoned their newborn children here and there, and in some houses and some in the streets, and without a backward they crowded together at the Most High Temple. Various were the supplications of those gathered there because of what the king was profanely plotting. In addition, the bolder of the citizens would not tolerate the complexion of his plans or the fulfillment of his intended purposes. They shouted to their fellows to take arms and die courageously for the ancestral law, and create a considerable disturbance in the holy place. And being barely restrained by the old men and the elders, they resorted to the same posture of supplication as the others. Meanwhile, the crowd, as before, was engaged in prayer, while the elders near the king tried in various ways to change his arrogant mind from the plan that he had conceived. But he in his arrogance took heed of nothing, and began now to approach, determined to bring aforesaid plan to a conclusion. When those who were around him observed this, they turned together with our people to call upon him who has all power to defend them in the present trouble, and not to overlook this unlawful haughty deed. The continuous, vehement, and concerted cry of the crowds resulted in an immense uproar. For it seemed not only the men, but also the walls and the whole earth echoed. Because indeed all that the time preferred death to the profanation. Indeed, all at the time. They all preferred death rather than the profanation of the place.